to webinar, and this month we're talking to Flake about safety in ski schools, how to keep students safer and really improve that ski school experience. So just a little bit of housekeeping before we get into the meat and potatoes. On the toolbar over to the side, you'll see that there's two buttons, one called Showcase, and that'll give you some links and some information where you can go and find out a little bit more about Flake. And the other one you'll see is the Q&A button. If you have any questions on the way through for us, then please feel free to fire them in there, and we'll pick up those questions as we go and answer them. So I'd like to introduce Steve. Steve is the CEO of Flake. G'day, Steve. How you doing?
Morning. Good. Yourself?
Good. Thank you. Not bad at all. Not bad at all. So, Steve, you're in Colorado, right?
That's it. Yeah, down in well, it was sunny Boulder a week ago, but now we're definitely getting into the start of the season. That's for sure.
All right. So the weather's coming in. That's good. So tell us a little bit about Flake and what it is you guys do for ski resorts.
Sure. So we, at a base level, provide GPS tracking for ski schools. We track all the kids and the instructors in about 13, 14 resorts throughout North America and a couple in Europe, providing real-time data as to where the instructors and students are at any point in time. And then, throughout the day, if there's a separation incident, for example, kid goes down the wrong run, or sometimes decides to go down the wrong run, then they can be looked up online and reconnected pretty quickly. So it's essentially, we provide peace of mind for parents, and we help resorts deliver a duty of care in making their schools as safe as possible.
So you guys started back in 2008 with Steamboat and Copper Mountain, right?
That's correct, yeah.
And so where else is Flake in operation now?
So yeah, from 2008 we then expanded out through a lot of resorts that were part of Intrawest at the time. So Winter Park, Whistler, Mont Tremblant, and then and I have been operating at other places at Big White, Smuggler's Notch, Angel Fire. I work with European Snow Sports over in Verbier and Zermatt, and Deer Valley over in Utah. So we've got quite a spread. Sugarloaf up in Maine is our latest resort that's coming on board this season. Awesome. And yeah, it's an interesting business, and we work across the board and in so many different areas that it makes life interesting. The weather that we deal with in Whistler, for example, is like the 4 seasons in one day, whereas Tremblant gets bloody cold, and Colorado's sort of a good mix in between. And so making our equipment bulletproof for all those situations has been extremely tough.
Yeah, technology and battery life in the cold is an issue, right?
Oh, that's right. I mean, hardware in general in ski resorts doesn't mix that well. I mean, we started when we were first doing R&D for the company. We started building networks and putting antennas up. And I remember the first season at Buller, we had an antenna up on a chairlift with 1.5 meters of ice on it. Fair to say, it didn't really work that well. So it's always been a challenge, and we spent a lot of time over the last several years developing the hardware, making sure that it works in the environment. And I think we're now on our 4th generation device as well. So it's continual evolution as we try to make it the best that we can.
Yeah. So tell us a bit about why you set Flake up in the first place. Like, how did that come about?
It was basically a stupid idea to start with. A friend of mine had this idea. He wanted to track himself and his brother down the ski slopes and see who was the best skier. And so I was, let's say, young and naive at the time, and thought, yeah, sounds like a good idea. And so that's basically what we did. We took that idea and started looking the business, and people rented it out for $5 a day and all that sort of stuff. Did some amazing spreadsheets that said that makes sense, and away we went. But it turns out that nobody was really interested in that sort of concept of it. There's a very small percentage of people that really care about their stats. I think skiing is one of those things where you go out and enjoy it. And so we pushed on, managed to convince a lot of people to give us money, and then eventually got to the point where we had this technology, and bumped into a lady at a conference who was from Steamboat, and we got connected with Steamboat, and they were looking for a live tracking system for their ski school. They had an RFID solution in place that would basically track a kid as they got on a chairlift, got off a chairlift, and a couple of points in between, which is great. RFID technology for that is great in a theme park where you got a constrained area, but on a ski resort, it's near on useless. So we came in, we demonstrated the technology, we tracked the ski school director as he drove out of town, drove back into town to pick up something he forgot, and then drove off again. So it was a pretty good demonstration, and then we sort of just went from there.
Awesome. So folks, if you're just joining us, you can use the menu buttons towards the top of the screen there. You can have a look at the showcase, and there's a link to the Flake website, so you can read a little bit more. And the other button there is for the Q&A section. So if you do have any questions on the way through that you want to ask Steve or myself, please push those into the question section, and we'll get to those as we move through. So Steve, obviously this came around with regards to, like you say, that kind of marrying of events. You met the guys from Steamboat, and you started to talk about ski school. So I think you just said the primary advantage is actually for parents, really. It's peace of mind knowing that their kid is out there, and they're kind of attached to the instructor.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, safety and peace of mind is definitely the core of the product. It's where we started, and it's always, fundamental to everything that we do. We don't compromise that. But we have definitely expanded upon the product as we've, over the last several years. I mean, and more of natural extensions too, because, as we were tracking the kids throughout the day, we were capturing their entire location, about which runs they did, how fast they were going, all that sort of stuff. So they could actually then start to review that at the end of the day, see where they did, how they were progressing, and so forth. And then that led into, the creation of a whole bunch of other things around, okay, well, now they're coming to relive their day. So wouldn't it be great if they could provide feedback on their lesson? So introduced a survey piece to that. And, the resorts that we work with, they went from collecting a couple hundred surveys to several thousand surveys through our system, just as it was easy. People would come, there's a hook for them to come to the website, they complete a survey and away they go. And then we got, surveys, and we've got customized emails that can go out to engage the parents. And then we introduced, the badges and the offers. So it's sort of, we went down two angles. One was a guest engagement piece to help ski schools continually connect with the guest, because I think that's really important as you try to create lifelong skiers. Is they've got to feel that you're paying attention, that you want them back, and that you're doing everything you can to make that a really positive experience. And then at the same time, we've gone down sort of the administration route as well, of taking the data that we had in terms of creating, digital class lists. And then we turn that into things like payroll reports to help with the administration side of things. So it's been a very interesting journey as we started with that original hook. They got the parents really, excited about peace of mind. We got the ski schools with this new tool that has saved a whole bunch of time in terms of, kids get disconnected. That happens. It's, in most cases, it's no one's fault. Ski resorts are just a very big area. And when you're dealing with beginners or people who don't know the mountain, then it's really easy to get disconnected. So we've just made it extremely simple. You search for somebody by name, or you look at the alerts to see how far they've gone from an instructor. And then you get reconnected, within 5 minutes. And I think that is a huge advantage for a school, because they can spend more time focusing on the lesson, more time teaching. And then not only, disconnections not only affect that single student and the instructor, I mean, the whole group becomes affected. Basically, whole group has to ski to the bottom of a chairlift, wait for instructions, and then figure out how they're going to get reconnected with that one student. So, when you're paying $100, $120 plus for a lesson, taking half an hour out of that lesson is a pretty substantial amount of time, amount of value. And we'd like to think that, Flake is a great tool that allows us to minimize that problem.
Yeah, it's really interesting that, like you say, it started just from tracking the kids and making sure they don't get separated. And there's value in that, like you say, in the value of the lesson, in the peace of mind. But that it's kind of grown from there, because you now know, where the instructors have been, what they've been up to when they're in and out, and you've got now a suite of tools that helps you actually manage the ski school as well.
Yeah, that's correct. It's been great for that. And we've had the odd occasion, I suppose, where instructors are very concerned about the big brother approach.
Yep.
But to be honest, I mean, that's probably half a dozen times that it is really concerning. A lot to start with, but generally the argument is that nobody has the time to bother looking at everybody's performance or everybody's tracks. They're only concerned where something abnormal happens. So if there are definitely cases where instructors have been caught out going on runs that they shouldn't have, into terrain that they shouldn't have, of splitting up their class when they shouldn't have. But that's a very small majority, or sorry, very small piece of it. And a lot of instructors, I think, just the benefits far outweigh sort of any negative connotation from it. I mean, we've tracked I think nearly 4 million instructors and students since we launched, and had very, very few complaints.
Yes. Yeah, I know that ski patrollers, for example, don't particularly like being tracked either. So it's interesting to hear how that's progressed. So, I mean, naturally, something a system like this, there's clearly a bunch of software that's involved with it. There's a lot of hardware as well. So I can't imagine that the cost is kind of an easy one to get over for a ski school or for the finance department. How does that kind of roll?
Yeah, look, it's always an interesting discussion. The safety is very hard to put a value on. When you get down to it, it's if you take a worst case scenario is a kid gets lost and is separated for hours, and the real worst case scenario obviously is something, a fatality happens, for example, which is pretty rare in ski school. But those things do happen where kids can get separated for hours. So you start talking around the value of, well, what's a negative guest experience, and you can start to do some numbers that flow out from there. You start to sort of talk about the guest feedback loops that we have, and survey responses, and the tools that we have to notify instructors of a bad experience or directors of a bad experience. So we go through a multi-layer sort of approach in terms of justifying the value, and trying to boil it down to numbers. There's a lot of intangible benefits with the program that any finance director has sometimes a lot of trouble with, just in the pure number or in the pure number crunching and getting it through. But we found that obviously when resorts introduce it, then it sticks around, and we've been fairly successful, I think, in making it fairly easy. So you get the one fee, and that includes everything, and service and support and integration, and you name it. If it breaks, we fix it, type deal. So it's a lot about I think you've got to, if you're going to charge a high price, you got to treat people well, and history says that we've done that pretty well. particularly as we introduce new features. New features as they come into our ski school product, for example, just are free of charge. So badges is a great example where ski school's got access to badges just as an upgrade that we put in place. So yeah, it's definitely, it's pricey. We acknowledge that, but at the same time, when you're talking about a quality product that needs to work in this particular environment. I mean, you talk about Tremblant where -20, -30 with wind chill. You want something that's robust, and you don't want something where somebody's compromised on the technology, on the battery life, in order to make it a little bit cheaper for you.
Yeah.
So that's sort of where we play is making sure that what we put on the hill works, and that's the important thing.
So you say, I mean, there's benefit here for the parents in ski school. I think that picture is very clear. It occurs to me that there should be some benefit for the resort as a whole to be able to say, look, we use Flake. We've got your kids in the safest possible hands because we know where they are. Do you find that flows on into that marketing realm as well, and the resorts are finding benefit there too?
Look, it's definitely been separated in the past. I think the marketing departments have operated independently of ski school, and for a large part ourselves, we've been so focused on our partners in the ski schools that we tend to not step outside of that either. We're very operationally focused. Let me put it that way. So we come in and we understand about the process flows and getting kids on the hill quickly and making sure that anyone can use the software and all that sort of stuff. But we've never really crossed over into talking about Flake to the end user. We sort of left that to the resorts, and they have typically not pushed it as a bigger benefit as they could. I think it's a great. I mean, I've got 2 kids there. My youngest or oldest, sorry, is 3, and we're going to put him in lessons this year. And there's definitely a big advantage where you've got a couple of resorts to pick from, particularly Front Range here, that anyone who is doing the most they can to make sure that they know where your kid is at any point in time, that's a big advantage. There and I think the resorts that we work with should be playing that up, and that's something that we're working with them on this year, and definitely trying to push that out, because I think particularly like Copper, Winter Park, Steamboat, where it's pretty competitive here against Vail in the Colorado region. I think it's a great advantage to push the RFID tracking that Vail has. There's parts of what we do, but definitely doesn't have the granularity of that's where that student is at that particular point in time, or they've now been separated from their instructor for 15 minutes, and this is where the instructor is, this is where the student is. I think that single bit, it's I don't want to overstate it, but that's the important part of it, is where they are, and everything else is great. Badges, surveys, emails, relive your day. It's all great, but what it boils down to, I think, is that live location and being able to transmit that, and anybody who needs to know that location can know it really quickly.
And so from the guest point of view, I mean, when they come in for registration at ski school, I'm assuming that all their details, obviously they've already registered, they might have paid online and all the rest of it. What's the experience from their point of view? Do they just get given one of your devices and it sits in a pocket and off they go?
Yeah, pretty much that's it. I mean, it's a mandatory product. So everybody taking a lesson, or at least a kid ski lesson, will get a tag. And so typically they'll go through the registration process in the morning, and then they'll go out on snow, and they would, their instructor or a supervisor will hand them a tag, scan them into the system, and then scan them to the instructor. So it's a pretty seamless process in terms of, getting the tag on. It sits just above their ski boot. Originally we designed it as an armband, but we found that the kids take off their jackets at lunch, where they rarely take off their pants. So,
right.
Yeah.
Right.
That was an important lesson that we learned in the first season of Operation Steamboat.
Gotcha. All right. So we've got a question here from Jay, one of our guests. Steve, there are a number of legal and safety concerns that commonly come up with school groups in Canada. Does your technology and your experience, excuse me, give the resort and/or the visiting school greater peace of mind?
It's a good question. I mean, we don't deal specifically with the schools. We do know, for example, Whistler does use Flake with all the school groups that come up. So, is that I would assume that they're using that because there's substantial benefit in it in terms of peace of mind for themselves and again, that duty of care. How much of that translates back to the parents, I couldn't tell you. But I do know it's used across all their school groups, and a large portion of those kids as well will go online and relive their day and see what they did for the day. So it's definitely a factor. We continually try to work with the resorts as best we can for those sort of situations. And at different resorts, they have different sort of products for local groups that are involved with. We know Winter Park does one, and up at Trompe-l'Oncle we're doing a lot of school groups, particularly foreign groups from the UK over the last several years. So it's important. It's not something that I typically deal with. It's more left to the resort, and we just sort of facilitate that.
And are there any legal implications, given that, I mean, you're essentially tracking information about kids that are almost certainly under 13 years old and so forth? What are the privacy and legal implications around that, if any?
Look, I mean, we don't see any from our point of view. All the information that we have is kept confidential within the resorts. The resorts choose to share each student's location data with them at the end of each day, but it's not shared during the day. So, parents can't access it till after 5 p.m. And all the data is completely secure and limited to that particular resort. So we've never had any issues in terms of the privacy aspect of it, because we typically, we do maintain fairly secure systems, and a lot of the information is kept confidential between the companies.
Right. Good. Yeah. So you can't track a kid during the day and figure out.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of it is a lot of the use cases. When we first came in, we had no idea about. I mean, even just your separated parents, and having one divorced parent come and potentially pick up the child when they're not allowed to. That's a situation that we never even thought of, but we got introduced to. And then part of it is just the experience for the kids. So, kids 5 or 6 or higher, if they see their parents during a lesson, even if for 5 minutes and then the parent goes away, I've seen some pretty massive meltdowns, and it just ruins the lesson for a lot of people. So I think it's a combination of, you don't want the parents involved in the day, even though they want to be. You don't want them involved because it leads to a worse lesson, a bad experience. And then, there are a whole bunch of legal issues around just letting that location data be known to people who, technically, they mightn't have any problems getting access to it. I mean, might be able to convince a ski resort employee that as a parent, they should find their daughter or son. But all the resorts we've talked to have said, we're keeping that confidential during the day. And it comes up occasionally, but no one so far has requested.
Makes sense.
Locations are shared.
So, as probably most of us knows, and the industry as a whole has sort of plateaued in terms of skier numbers, and we're heading towards the end of the boomer generation who have been lifetime skiers, and as a big set of numbers and they start to retire. Getting onboarding, new skiers, especially the kids, and getting them hooked on the sport for life. It seems to me that Flake has probably quite a significant part to play in that future.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think there is a significant need to change the way ski schools operate, and to focus on those beginners. I mean, some of the resorts that we work with, they, the best retention rates we've seen are where they take the best skiers, the best instructors that they have, and use those for their first time lessons. And those are the ideas that are sort of critical. You got to get people in, you got to get them excited, and you got to make it easy. They got to have a great experience that first time, or else they're not going to come back. I mean, skiing is not cheap. The lesson price is continually being pushed up, and I think it's potentially going the wrong way now. I mean, we've seen resorts where, the ski schools in particular are making more money with less students. So your short-term profitability is fantastic, but you're really killing the long-term sort of growth of the industry. And I think there needs to be a reverse where, you could even give ski school away for free. You've got to get people in. And I think that's the part of the problem I see with the industry. I think, it's expensive, and you've got so many other options. I mean, you're not just competing against other ski hills. You're, Disneyland. We took my son up to Thomasland in Massachusetts, and they're the sort of things you're competing against. A lot more activities that are a lot easier to do, and a lot cheaper. And so I think, ski school in particular has this great opportunity where they're the entry point. They're the people that first timers are going to come in and see, or people who've been out of the sport can come back in and just get better, take a guide around the mountain. I mean, I've been to a whole bunch of ski resorts that I have no idea where I am, and it'd be great to just have a local guide. And so there are definitely things I think ski schools need to really rethink about the how they're approaching their business. And a lot of that is just driven from the top. And a lot of it now is, you've got corporate holding groups that own multiple resorts and, public companies, and everyone's driven by different objectives. But I think the entire industry needs to take a step back and go, okay, the job of ski school is to get people in and to retain them, and to build the next generation. And so I think if schools can do that, then there's plenty of opportunity for the industry to grow. But if it's going to be a case of continuing to jack up the prices, then I think everybody's going to run into some problems at some point in time.
Yeah. Yes, the safety of the participants and getting them down the hill and having a good day is entirely key to that as well. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's like any sport. If you're not having fun, then you're not going to come back and do it. And so I think, there's the guided part of skiing where, you need some help to get going. Once you get going, then, there's a lot of other factors that come into play. But that's where I think, ski school comes into play. I think where, terrain design and beginner terrain and gradually increasing difficulty comes into play as well. So it's not an easy solution, but there are definitely ways to do it. And I think, the focus just needs to be, you put back on getting people in, getting them to become those lifelong participants. Because if they're coming in for their, one or two times, then they're paying the dues and accommodation and all that sort of stuff. And maybe, the P&L looks pretty good for this ski season. But as you go down the track, it sort of is definitely going to go downhill.
Yeah. Excuse the pun on that one. Yeah, it's getting harder. All right, so we're about up to half an hour. So, folks, if you have any questions for Steve, please use the tools at the top. You can switch between the Showcase app, which will give you a link to the Flake website, or the Q&A, which will allow you to ask some questions. And we'll give you another minute or so if you want to plug anything else in. So Steve, I think that's been fantastic, really very interesting actually, to learn a bit more about ski school and safety in ski school, and is there there's clearly a path forward and a use for technology that's available now. So all right, we have another question. Is there a current role for Flake relative to adult lessons that you see?
Yeah, well, look, we definitely we play with a lot of adult and private lessons. About 3 years ago, we started putting tags onto just the instructor, because there was definitely not I think a big need for tagging up everybody. So I would say it's at least four of our resorts, the 3 in Colorado and then Whistler, we're doing adults and privates, and using that as a way for them to engage with their guests. So survey data is an important part of that. The end of day email. It's all plays into it. It's definitely, we see that as being an important part, and the number of beginners who are coming into the sport as adults, I think is a reasonable amount, and the number of people coming back into the sport after being away for several years. So we see adults and privates as a pretty big, pretty important part of it, and more on the guest engagement side than the safety aspect. But it does play into some of our administration tools and making life easier for ski schools to manage those sort of aspects around, even from instructors and training and scheduling and payroll, a whole bunch of different things. So we take a pretty holistic approach to the school, and are continually building out tools that, for all levels, not just the beginners. I think that's always going to remain our core. And as I said at the start, live tracking is fundamental to what we do, but it's definitely broadening the reach of it now.
And so, what do you think's in the future for Flake? Drones are a hot topic at the moment. Certainly in the States. Do you think you're going to end up using drones to help film lessons and give video feedback or something like that?
Yeah, look, interesting questions. They're all potential. You could throw a dice across. I could say that the guest or the guest user side, guest engagement side of it is, there's a whole bunch of things that we think about. Our biggest focus right now is on, I suppose, the back end simplification for ski schools, making life easier. For the one simple reason that the less time that a director or a supervisor has to spend in paperwork is more time that they can spend on the hill with the guests. So that's where we think the key is we want to be able to reduce all the back end stuff, all the data entry, all the pain that goes along with training people, dealing with your part-time, casual, temporary instructors. The visa situation, caused in the US and Canada over the last couple of years, as you lost a lot of instructors who went back and forth between southern and northern hemispheres, and then that sort of, you lost a few of those professional instructors. So there's a lot more work now, I think, in terms of dealing with the instructors. And so our primary focus right now is about getting rid of that, getting rid of the pain, getting rid of the headache, and making it easy for schools to run and to get everybody out on the hill more, whether it's just talking to the guest, whether it's, spending more time in the lesson. But that's really, one of our high priorities is to make sure that ski schools spend as much time on the snow as possible.
Yeah, interesting. All right, good stuff. Well, Steve, thank you very much for your time. it's been very interesting to learn a little bit about Flake. For anybody that does want to find out a little bit more, please have a look at the Showcase app and go to onthemountain.flake.com, and that's spelled F-L-A-I-K. This webinar will be put up on the Medic 52 blog, so you will get a chance to replay it if you wish. And we'll also post up some details so you guys can contact Flake, get in touch with Steve and ask some more questions from there. So again, like I say, thank you very much for your time, Steve.
No, thank you.
And yeah, have a good day. Thanks very much, everyone, for coming along. See you soon.
Cheers.